Wife cheated, so I tricked her into publicly admitting to having the affair and STD. In college, I met the woman who I thought was my one. We dated for about 2 years and had a big wedding after a 10-month engagement. Her family was pretty well-to-do in a small southern town. We were both continuing our educations, and I was also working to support us. I was pursuing a master's in engineering while she was finishing her doctorate in anthropology. Over the summer, an opportunity came up for her to make some extra money going as an aide on a religious studies trip to Jamaica. I didn't hesitate when she asked me about it. I mean, she was going to get to visit Jamaica and get paid for it. I saw no downside other than missing her being at home for 6 weeks. Little did I know at the time, but she had been ducking the professor. He had hung out with us, smoked my weed and drank my ducking beer. I considered him a friend who arranged the trip for a couple months, and it was a getaway for them to bang all over the island. I, clueless and happy, went about the weeks while she was gone taking extra shifts, so I could match what she made in our account and surprise her. What a dip crap, right? One of the students from the trip actually seeked me out to clue me in. I didn't believe him until I started looking for evidence on my own. I broke down and checked her texts while she was sleeping and nothing was there. There were a few VMs, so I decided to listen, and there it was, a message from the giant a-hole saying how exciting it was that I almost caught them. I opened up her laptop and hit the emails after that. It was piles and piles of crap, making fun of me for not knowing, ducking in our bed and laughing about it. There was so much and I was so heartbroken. Still too hurt to take any action. I was lost. I had no idea what to do, so I sat on it for a couple weeks and acted as normally as I could. I noticed everything now. I felt so stupid for not seeing it before. So many signs. One stuck out in particular. I noticed that our stash of homemade weed lube, if you've never tried it, I highly recommend giving it a go, was going down even though we weren't having sex. It was obvious they were also using the fruits of my labor to get off more effectively. This really pissed me off. Like unreasonably so, Hulk ducking mad. It finally all hit me. I was a goddamn joke to these a-holes, and they were using the lube I made and ducking in my bed. I didn't hurt anymore, I just wanted to make them hurt. So, while she was studying at the library, I made a new batch of lube. I put enough in it for it to smell like normal, but I also added some poison ivy from our backyard to the mixture, and after refilling the spray bottle we used for application, I waited. A few days go by and I'm working extra so I can be out of the house more, and bam, bait taken. That night after she goes to sleep, my plan goes into action. I sneak her phone away and delete my contact, while replacing his phone number in his contact as mine. I go to bed, but can't sleep because it feels like I'm 5 and tomorrow is Christmas. Dawn arrives and she's in the shower. I get a text. "I'm super itchy, are you okay?" Now Lord, now is my time. Look, I thought it had cleared up, but I guess I had a flare-up. I'm sorry, but I've got herpes, and I guess you do now too. I heard this witch squeak in the shower. I'm covering my mouth, damn near losing it. I went on to tell her that it was time to end things now. A new semester was about to start, and I kind of have a little crush on another T/A. I wanted her mad. This is a woman that never got told no growing up, and never had to deal with rejection. Let alone from a balding dude in his 50s with herpes. When she got out of the shower, it was obvious she had been crying, but I could see the anger in her eyes. I could see how uncomfortable she was, squirming at the table drinking coffee and mulling the situation over. Another little nudge is what she needed. The reply she got to her pages and pages of anger and sadness was, "Thanks for the good times, but can you keep this a secret between us? I don't want to ruin my chances with anyone else." She's flush with anger now, just seething. She gathered her keys and headed out the door without even saying goodbye. I knew where she was going. I booted up her laptop and set it to reformat, deleting her dissertation and any notes pertaining to it before following her to campus. I parked a few lots over and rush over to his office, where I find her screaming at him for giving her herpes. There's lots of people there. Professors, aides, students, other faculty. I'm dying. He is beyond embarrassed and confused as duck. she is ugly crying in front of her peers, I'm in heaven. I didn't even care that people were going to think I had herpes too. The fallout was apocalyptic in their department. He lost his job due to code of conduct at the university. We got divorced the following year. State law was we had to be separated for 1 full year before being granted a divorce. I got to keep most of the assets, primarily savings, and not a ton, but I worked for it. She never finished her doctorate and went on to be a perpetually pregnant housewife that sells Herbalife on Facebook, and he teaches high school now. It took a few years for it all to unfold, but watching it was glorious. The second story. On my second trip to the Philippines, I met a lovely lady, very attractive. She is 23, and I am 35, and we quickly connected. I am an American. She was the ideal traditional girl. She cooks clean, and does everything that a normal Western woman wouldn't, and she worships me. Within a span of 3 years, I traveled back and forth to the Philippines. I thought I have met my wife. She came from a really good family. Her family are impoverished rural, and lives in the countryside, 10 kilometers on a mud road, not religious, and they are good people. I always wanted to marry a traditional woman, and I have always thought that feminism and the culture in the West make it impossible to find a good faithful wife in the States. That's why I prefer Philippine women. I married my wife 3 years after knowing her. I didn't see any red flags. She just graduated as a nurse in the Philippines, and I paid for most of her tuition during the 3-year period while she was in nursing school. So when she goes to the States, she will be making good money. I work at the DMV, so I don't make much. So if she comes to the States, she will be earning more money than me, but while she was in the Philippines, I paid for her apartment, took care of her parent and relative financially, and I paid our wedding expenses. When I returned back to the States, I filed for a spousal visa for my wife while she was in the Philippines. After her interview in U.S. Embassy in her country, she was given an immigrant visa that expires in a year. When she came to the United States, it took us 4 years of going back and forth with USCIS for her to receive her 10-year green card. I went through the entire complicated, time-consuming, expensive process. During those 4 years, she took the nursing exam and passed, and we had a daughter. Since she was making more money than I could ever make, I decided to be the stay-at-home dad for our daughter. Although I do work part-time and some side jobs, she, however, became the breadwinner. During that 4 years, she was the model wife. I didn't notice any red flag. We never had any big marital problems that raised red flags during the 4 years visa process for my wife to remove her temporary status and gain a green card, but I did see signs that she was getting too carried away with the American lifestyle. But it didn't become noticeable till she received her 10-year. She knows that after she receives her 10 years, there is nothing I can do to return her back to her country unless she commits a felony. After she received her green card, I felt like she left the marriage. She reveled in the new life, the independence, the freedom. I can't say we drifted apart, it felt like we were driven. She became distant, sometimes abrasive, and found every excuse to be out of the house. The pandemic isolation didn't help. I know she looks at life in the US and thinks boring. We don't go anywhere, don't see anybody, a horrible place to leave. Her original country would be a lot worse for pandemic lockdowns, but she doesn't see that. 6 months ago, I felt something change. I caught her in little lies, and she started going out with work colleagues after work. Her phone, her pay stubs, her bank account, everything became top secret to me. I tried to talk to her. Asked her if she needed a change, if we needed to change, if she was looking for something more. I went with my wife, her reluctantly, to a marriage counselor, but it was obvious she won't commit to anything except pursuing her own happiness. I asked the counselor to do more individual sessions with me, but for some strange reason she blew me off, something I can deal with later. She took off her wedding ring 6 months ago. I gave her a list of things I insist on. Wear your ring, never drive drunk, call/text where you're going, but she ignored it. At that point I knew, when I catch her in a lie, it's the third strike. I said I knew she was hiding things, she needed to tell me the truth. I mentioned a few of the lies she had told, but she denied everything, then basically clammed up. The lies got longer and more frequent, but still deniable, until last month she contradicted herself between 3 lies, and I pressed her for the truth. It took an hour until she admitted she had a secret Tinder account. She had been meeting up with multiple guys she met on Tinder. I know most of what she was doing, taking days off work but driving to the building, parking, and taking Uber to her hookups' houses, several times. Texting me party night at colleague's house, but spending the entire night, texting I had too many drinks, I'll sleep here at a Tinder buddy's house. Going shopping on her days off, but sneaking out to guys' apartments, several times instead. Even meeting her hookups in the parking lot at work. But I didn't know soon enough, I've pieced together all this after the fact. When I pressed her for the truth last month, she told me only about 10% of it, and says I've told you enough. And she lies still about these things. She's a whole new class of cheater, but she's a liar through and through. I know of at least 23 times she met up with her Tinder hookups, at least 11 different men. She only admits to 4 of them. This much truth came out over about 2 weeks, and my pain, distress, depression, and anger just built day by day. It's been 6 weeks since her admission, and I still can't sleep more than 3 hours a night. Our daughter is a beautiful, happy girl, at an age where her imaginative world turns everything into a game or adventure. She should have 2 parents to keep up with her, direct her development, and enjoy her childhood, but her mother has been absent at least 6 days a week, putting her own urges as her only priority. Our daughter is already suffering. Every day she asks, "Where's Mama?" I want to play with her. "Will Mama put me to bed tonight?" And she acts out her desperation for attention. It's inexcusable for my wife to spend our daughter's life. She has done permanent damage to her family. I'm the stay-at-home mom-dad. I take care of our daughter 24/7 while my wife works full-time and sneaks around. My wife would spend all her daughter time running around and screwing strangers, chasing her own gratification while I tended to a toddler's every need. Because of the pandemic, I and my daughter hadn't left the house in 6 months, except for neighborhood walks, and me going grocery shopping every 10 days, alone, to protect against COVID-19. My daughter is my top priority. I've had a toddler pulling on my sleeve the entire time. I couldn't check up on my wife's whereabouts at night. I couldn't cheat even if I wanted to. My wife used me when I was anchored at home so she could be alone and screw around. She threw her daughter's needs out the window, while she spent every off-work minute satisfying her own urges. And she did this during a pandemic. She is a nurse, so she obviously knows better. She put her family at risk, her daughter at risk. Screwing multiple strangers when health experts tell us to limit exposure outside the family. She refuses to talk about what was in her mind when she left her daughter alone and made choices putting us at high risk of COVID-19. She has no motherly instincts, no concern for her daughter's health and well-being. I contacted a divorce attorney 3 days after my wife admitted the basics of what she did. The papers will be served within a week, September 2020. My wife doesn't suspect anything. In fact, from her point of view, I've been the model husband for 5 weeks. She hasn't expressed any guilt, regret, or remorse for destroying me, her marriage, and her daughter's life. Instead, she most likely sees me as begging forgiveness. Since I've been trying to meet her every need and coddle her, she has said several times, "I'm hurting, I'm trying to keep it together." But her patterns of hiding and lying and independence haven't changed. Live and learn. I feel used. She has a green card, she'll profit from the marriage. She still has her list of Tinder hookups. She'll soon have the complete independence she's wanted. But I'll be damned if I'm giving up my daughter to be raised by her. Update: I've been keeping a journal since late March, a text file. It's now 350 kilobytes and I document everything. Also keep backups. Her green card is for 10 years, I know this stuff thoroughly inside and out. I planned and filed and completed the immigration stuff, so that we'd be set up for life in the US. She will not be in danger of losing her green card, unfortunately, unless she commits a felony. An immigrant visa to the US involves me signing a contract with the US government to reimburse government for any public benefits that she receives for basically 10 years. I signed that with clear eyes. I never expected otherwise. And I'm okay with it. The money I would have spent on health insurance, cosmetics, clothes, etc., if we'd stayed married would add up to more. My attorney and I have already prepared the divorce petition, focusing on my wife's absence from her daughter and lack of interest in her well-being. We've even got depositions from friends and neighbors who have witnessed my being the 24/7 parent. So, yes, hopefully, that will weigh in for parenting rights. And the draft petition already asks the court to order that I keep our daughter's passports, that my wife cannot take her out of the country, that she needs my consent to get a new passports for our daughter. Got that? My daughter is my top priority. If it comes down to mega spousal support versus child custody, I'll gladly make the trade, although she won't know that. I've read the 180 stuff. I don't really understand the purpose unless it's to achieve reconciliation. I'll read it again with the idea of achieving detachment. I'm pretty far along on the points anyway, and for the past 5 weeks I've been the model husband. But reconciliation has no chance. I'm not gonna be the husband whose wife screws a dozen Tinder guys every month. She absolutely refuses to make a commitment about not continuing it in the future. There's no point in going down the give me a timeline or write no contact letters. Divorce is coming and it's over. She might get nasty when the divorce hits her, I don't know. But my attorney and I have been preparing. Her typical response to attempts to communicate is to clam up, but if instead she turns on the tears and pleads for mercy, I won't engage. She already made her choices, there's no undoing. 2 things I gotta do reading posts here. Make a doctor appointment for a complete physical, check for STDs. We had sex, although infrequently, during the months since she started screwing multiple guys. I was unsuspecting at the time, and get sleep aids. And I'll get a voice-activated recorder next shopping trip. Update: my attorney and I work well together, and I trust his experience and advice. But I'm caught between doing what my gut says, and doing what he advises. I had planned to spill the story to my wife's family when she got served. Her family lives in her country. I told my attorney my plans and he says no, don't do that. We don't want to come across as vindictive and mean, or screw up any possible negotiations. I can see that. But if anybody on earth can drum some sense into my wife's head, it's her family. We lived in her country for 3 years after we were married, only 10 miles from her mom, dad, brother, and sisters. I love her family. In fact, they were one of the reasons I chose my wife. I also have their respect. I've heard countless times how much they admire me, and how I fit into their world. They will absolutely want to destroy her, figuratively, I hope, when they hear what she's done. I've gone this route before when my wife broke some boundaries, and the effect is immediate. When her mom and dad heard of what she did, they straightened her out quick and left her contrite, and with clear instruction not to shame her family. That's the culture there. Family is paramount, and I was glad to be part of that. The divorce papers will be served next week. I've signed them already. Just waiting on one more statement from a friend who can vouch for my relationship with my daughter. So I have to decide in a few days, to tell her family? Or to wait until the divorce is final, probably 4 to 5 months from now, as my attorney suggests, since then it couldn't jinx any negotiations. If I don't tell them now, she probably won't tell them immediately either, although it would be impossible to hide very long. In any case, when she was caught, she told a few of her friends I cheated on my husband, and she'll tell them the same thing. But it's 1,000 times more serious than that. She went on Tinder, and did it at least with a dozen guys, strangers, sneaking off to their apartments when she was supposed to be at work, leaving her daughter at home with me 24/7 when she could have been a mother. And doing this in the middle of a pandemic. Her family needs to know the true story. They would be livid. But for me, the ideal outcome would be to have her go back to her country, leave me and my daughter to live in peace, and let me bring up my daughter knowing true family values. I don't know if she'd agree to this, but I have to have incentives. My attorney has a point. If I tip off her parents now, she won't have an incentive to return to her country just to face the firing squad. Update: I see some of the same reactions I had to all these revelations. I doubt my wife admitted to more than 10% of the truth. But when she first admitted meeting one Tinder guy, me not knowing about the others yet, I asked if they used a condom. My immediate concern was STDs. Obviously there's a lot more risky behavior beyond that, say COVID. She said yes. But what proof would there be? And I'd be an idiot if I believed she sucked a condom, so even if there was a condom involved for a few minutes. I'm realistic. And then I found out about the other dozen guys. She also said she wore a mask when she first met them. Somehow she thinks this shows how conscientious she was about protecting our health, including the health of our daughter. Incredible. And I know she's lying. There's no point in pursuing these questions with her, she'd lie all the way through, and the truth is pretty obvious. She spent at least 3 months doing this, almost every hour outside of work, both scheduled and unscheduled time off, chasing guys. I was at home with our daughter, 24/7. She should have been here with our toddler. She should have been a mother, not absent from our child's life. Heck, she should have been a wife. As I said, she is a nurse, she works in healthcare, she knows better, she should have protected us from COVID risk. No, I'm not even considering reconciliation. The papers are signed, waiting for one more declaration from a witness vouching for my involvement in my daughter's life. My lawyer says we're on track to serve her next week. As for the 180, I've got everything lined up for the divorce. She has no inkling of what's coming. We haven't talked about the elephant in the room for 6 weeks, as she refuses to engage. Of course, I wanted to know details of how, when, why, who, where. I think from reading here, it's the typical reaction when you discover your wife has been effing around. But she lied, gaslight, blame shifted, and simply clammed up. For a couple of days I tried to talk to her, she essentially told me stop talking or I'll leave. I never considered reconciliation, I just wanted to know why she destroyed our marriage, and gave her daughter a life of suffering. But for the past 6 weeks, I haven't brought it up. There's no point. It's over, she has to live with the consequences. We don't talk about that, but we talk about normal life. What I'll cook for dinner, yeah, I'm the homemaker, she's usually working or out, what our daughter did today, when's her next bath, etc. I'm detached. I'm already moving on. The divorce papers will, hopefully, order her to move out in 6 weeks, too long, in my mind, but the court wants reasonable requests. Unfortunately, because of our daughter, my wife will be in my life for many years. I'd prefer she just disappear. So my last post, where I asked when should I tell her family, was asking for experience and advice. Her family, they live in her country, will want to destroy her when they find out. Should I tell them the whole story next week when she's served? Or should I, as my attorney advises, wait? Of course, that question doesn't impact the divorce if it gets to court. But I think the best outcome I can get in the divorce is through negotiation. My dream outcome is that my wife simply return to her country and leave me and my daughter in peace. My lawyer says if I burn her bridges in her home country, she might have no reason to go back, if her parents will put her in the firing squad. The court will never order her to leave the US, they will give her spousal support, child custody rights, hopefully more than 50%, order me to pay for her apartment, etc. The best outcome for me is to negotiate the divorce, and my attorney says to keep things even, don't come across now as mean. On the other hand, I want her family to know the truth, which won't come from her. We have reached the end of the story. Let's listen to some of the comments by our Reddit listeners. Reader comment, are you sure she wasn't getting paid for this? Original poster, I hadn't thought about that until I saw the posts here. I have no real way of knowing, her bank account is top secret. I haven't seen her with any extra cash, but I know she hides things, probably at work. It wouldn't change much anyway, except higher risk of STDs in my mind. I mentioned the possibility to my attorney, and he said it wouldn't change anything. I live in a no-fault divorce state, taking money from a guy per se isn't a crime. However, if I could prove prostitution, it would weigh heavily in my favor to get 100% custody of my daughter. I just don't have any indication of that. Yep. I'd like to know her motivation too. We talked about a lot of things before we were married about her future, our lives, her dreams, my support for her. And I told her that if she ever cheated, I would leave. More accurately, she would go. She definitely remembers this, maybe this is her extreme way of asking to get out of the marriage. Well, she made her point, it would have been a lot easier if she had just told me she wants out. Or more likely, she discovered a life of freedom and plenty in the US and just went wild. That, plus adapting to a new culture, away from family, trying to fit in, trying to figure out if she was happy or depressed, she can't handle stress. I've lived overseas for many years, so I know about culture shock. I was always there for her and helping her to cope with the changes and difficulties of moving halfway round the world. All that goes out the window though. She broke her boundaries at least 100 times, I figure. That's as far as I'll go in trying to figure out why. For the first 3 days after I found out, I tried to get her answer to why and got nowhere. She clams up. She isn't honest with herself. How could she be honest with me? Make no mistake, the marriage is over. Papers to be served next week. Oh yeah, I know I'm not the first to be used like that. I've read a lot about scams in her country, I've even witnessed a few, and I know you have to constantly have your guard up. Thing is, we met in person, not online. I don't even have any social media accounts. I felt our story was unique, and we had something to build on. I travel for adventure, I've never used women. She told me a lot about her family, and a week after meeting her I said, let's go, I want to visit your home. It involved 20 hours of ferry/bus travel, so that wasn't a trivial decision. What I'm getting at is that I didn't sense the scam in her character. And after we got married, we lived there for 3 years as I traveled back and forth to the US. I had my antenna up, never any suspicions, but I consciously decided a move the US was the best for our marriage. And then look what happened. I finally got a phone appointment with my doctor, no in-person appointments because of the pandemic. Got the full STD tests. I guess I can say that my wife made at least one good decision. She chose guys who were clean, all tests negative. And no sign of COVID in me or my daughter yet, considering my wife's exposure habits. And I got sleeping aids. For 3 nights I've finally got more than 3 hours of sleep. The divorce process is still in the initial paperwork stage. There's always something that causes a 1 to 3 day delay. One more declaration is pending from a family friend, to vouch for my fitness as a father. I'm sure the divorce petition will go to the court next week, and the papers served on my wife. My lawyer advised me to pack a go bag for me and my daughter. He's seen too many cases where the shock of being served caused the receiving spouse to go ballistic. My wife is off all next week, so she'll be home to get served. That's one good thing about her schedule change. I'll be ready to escape with my daughter to a motel if necessary. I really don't know what to expect for her reaction, but she shows no sign of being honest with herself, no sign that she recognizes the consequences of her choices, so I'd be happy if she just packs up and leaves. I'm requesting the court to order her to leave by November 1st. But as my lawyer says, it's up to the judge. I've made my case. I scheduled counseling sessions through my doctor. I desperately need to talk to someone. That's one tragedy of the pandemic. I haven't socialized in over 6 months, and I don't have anyone close. My daughter is suffering from that too, but she's so young she doesn't know what normal life is. Thanks for staying till the end of this video. Please like and subscribe. Feel free to express your opinion on the comment section.